So I don't know if you want to give just another minute or get going.
Oh, why don't we give it a couple more minutes? Just
you do have a quorum, so as well as looks like Brian Olmstead and Pat McMahon.
okay. Well, let's call this meeting to order. It is the Finance Committee meeting number 6-23. It's Wednesday, June 14th, 2023. This meeting is being held on Zoom and at the Water Center. It's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And it looks like we've got all the Finance Committee members now. With that, I'll turn it over back to you, Brian, for introductions and attendance.
Okay. Just by way of committee members and other board members that are on the Zoom call, you have yourself, the chair, you have Dale Van Stone, Marc Gibbs, Jeff Raybould, Dean Stevenson as committee members. And then I see Brian Olmstead and Pat McMahon as other board members that are not on the Finance Committee. And then Jennifer will make sure to note staff and guests that are either here in person in Boise or on the Zoom call.
Okay, excellent. Now to reiterate before we get started, if the presenters can hold their presentations to 30 minutes, that would be helpful so we could get done within a 2-hour time frame. The purpose of this is to get all of the board members, particularly the Finance Committee, on the same playing field with your project, so we know exactly what the project is and what it is that we're being asked to fund from the state level. So with that, I'll turn it over to Raft River Pipeline Projects, first up on the agenda. Who will be presenting for that project?
It'll be me, Madam Chair. This is Hattie Zobot, and I will be presenting for that project.
Good morning, Hattie. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. So let me pull it up. Well, I guess my 1.5-hour presentation is going to have to be cut a little short. Just kidding. It wasn't that long. But it is good to know what expectation you guys have for timeline. And okay. So thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Finance Committee and part of the Idaho Water Resources Board for this opportunity to talk with you about the Raft River Watershed Project. This is a project that's on the Regional Water Sustainability List, and the purpose of this presentation is to provide a project overview and needs for the project to be constructed. So my name is Hattie Zobot. I'm the engineer for the Raft River Recharge Group. I've worked with the group since 2015 when they were formed with the purpose of stabilizing the Raft River aquifer. I'm speaking on behalf of the project today, and Ryan Moss is a member of the Raft River Recharge Group. He has 33 years in production agriculture and farms located in the Raft River District, Raft River Recharge Group area, Sublette Irrigation District, Magic Valley Groundwater District, Southwest Groundwater District, and the North Snake Groundwater District. He's also been a 6-year board member for the Sublette Irrigation District, and he's been on the Groundwater District since its inception. So he's here to support and also answer questions related to the Groundwater District and as a farmer in the area. So I will go over the project background, and then I'll discuss the Raft River Basin Aquifer. Then I'll review the funding efforts to date. I'll give a brief update on the Raft River Irrigation District, and then discuss the project status and any support that is requested through the Regional Water Sustainability List. So the Raft River Watershed Project is a comprehensive watershed rehabilitation project that is being completed with the Raft River Flood District, the Raft River Groundwater District, and the Raft River Irrigation District, which is in formation. The proposed project will rehabilitate a portion of the Raft River Basin that will be designated as the Raft River watershed. This boundary is part of the funding efforts and is approximately 242,000 acres. It's developed by combining different hydrologic units as part of the NRCS process. The reason why the project was selected through the USDA NRCS PL 83566 project is because it is comprehensive. It's addressing flooding, water quality, and declining groundwater levels within the basin. I've highlighted here the Raft River tributary basin and in its relationship to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer in the picture to the right. Overall, the Raft River Watershed Project would provide flood protection for the Raft River Basin. It provides recharge to a designated critical groundwater area aquifer. It also provides a sustainable source of irrigation for agricultural producers and improves water quality in the Raft River before it flows into the Snake River. So the picture to the right shows the proposed project locations from the environmental assessment, which is being completed by JEB engineers. And the pipeline route is the pink line coming up the basin. Bank stabilization is in red, and flood detention basins are also marked on the map. But overall, it's a comprehensive watershed restoration project that addresses many different aspects that are affecting the Raft River Basin. So a little more detailed information about the project. It would install a pump station and pipeline from the Snake River to the Raft River Basin to deliver private water right permit for recharge. It also develops flood detention and recharge ponds adjacent to the pipeline and Raft River to remove sediment and pollutants and reduce flood flows, but also provide for recharge from the Snake River. There's bank restoration projects along the tributaries of the Raft River, which include Hegler Creek, because they're very high sediment producing rivers. And then the pipeline will enable soft conversion of groundwater acres to surface water for irrigation. The Raft River Flood District has made this project a priority because of recent flooding in 2017. I think we all remember when the water overtops the freeway, preventing travel from Burley to Pocatello without detouring through Utah. That flood was extensive and was caused loss of both crops and livestock. So as a result of that flood, the Raft River Flood District partnered with the Raft River Recharge Group and Raft River Electric to sponsor the project for funding through the USDA NRCS program. Raft River Electric is a partner in the project because the continued groundwater declines necessitate more power each year to serve groundwater pumpers in the area. And their part of the project is a substation upgrade that will provide the necessary power for the pump station. The Raft River Recharge Group is really the driving force behind this project. They are cohesive, they're committed, they have been very proactive in their efforts for funding and development of this groundwater recharge permit. Overall, they're the leaders of the group and have been key to getting this project moving forward. The Raft River Groundwater District is also an essential partner, although they're not partners within the watershed rehabilitation project. But Ryan Moss is also the chairman of the Groundwater District, and they recognize that the pipeline project will be critical to sustain irrigation in the valley. They work with well water consultants and do continued analysis to evaluate the impacts of current recharge projects, which they have tested quite a few recharge facilities adjacent to the Raft River already and use them yearly, and also track groundwater usage in the valley for the basin. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
I would just like to say that, you know, as chairman of the groundwater district, we've looked at all options to try to manage our aquifer and make it come back into stability. And there's limited resources inside the basin, so we've looked to outside the basin to try to bring some water in to help with this effort that we're moving forward with, and this pipeline is a big factor in that.
All right, well, thank you for that, Ryan. So now I'll talk more specifically about the Raft River Basin and why this project is so critical. The Raft River Basin is a really productive agricultural region and has an extensive dairy industry and agricultural industry within the valley. The population is pretty small, but that's also what makes it such a great resource, because it's highly productive and lots of land for agriculture. So first I'll start with the Raft River. The Raft River was previously a perennial stream before development in the Raft River occurred. The Raft River was first used for irrigation as a surface water source for a small amount of acres in the Raft River. Over time, as groundwater levels have declined, the river has become intermittent and subterranean in the northern part of the basin. And because it is intermittent, the vegetation and riparian habitat along the Raft River corridor has been eliminated, which creates a condition where when the Raft River does flow, it becomes a very high sediment load carrying river, which then pollutes the mouth of the Raft River, or the confluence of the Raft River with the Snake River at Lake Walcott. And you can see in this picture a sediment plume from the Raft River into the Minidoka Wildlife Refuge. So over time, the Raft River has been depositing sediment that is effectively drying up the wetlands in that region. And it's a high priority for the Minidoka Wildlife Refuge to see sediment loads decrease, among other stakeholders, including the Lake Walcott WAG. So the Raft River Aquifer is a larger tributary to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. It was designated as a critical groundwater area in 1963. The original investigation on groundwater conditions as of 1966 was published by Walker et al. In 1970. And recently, the Idaho Water Resources Board made the area a priority, and the Department of Water Resources and USGS are part of a larger groundwater modeling effort to evaluate the current groundwater conditions for Raft River, including a hydrologic characterization, which is underway. This is essential work. The hydrologic characterization is the first step in groundwater modeling efforts and will be really important to all stakeholders in the Raft River Basin and the understanding of the interaction between the Raft River and the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. So this is a picture showing the boundary of the Raft River hydrologic basin. That's in green. The red line is the critical groundwater area for the Raft River area. And we can see that the two boundaries do not match, which means that water rights are administered differently within that boundary, even though the larger boundary is what is determining water availability and recharge for the Raft River Aquifer. Those areas were removed from the critical groundwater area through petitions in 1966, 1970, and 1977, respectively. Another key element of the critical groundwater area is that additional development was not allowed to occur past the designation in 1963. So as farmers became more efficient with their water application and converted to sprinkler systems, they developed what were called expansion acres, which were designated by the legislature. Those expansion acres had special conditions that restricted their existence and required that annual withdrawals within the aquifer must equal annual recharge in order for the expansion acres to be viable. So in 2016, that was not demonstrated, and those acres were curtailed between 2016 and 2019 in the basin. The critical groundwater area expansion acres were curtailed, and that was a significant impact to the region. It also is very restrictive. It does not allow for mitigation, and it doesn't take into account any efficiency improvements or cropping practices that the farmers may have implemented. We all understand that curtailment is a huge economic impact to the region. Approximately 7,800 acres of water rights were curtailed over a 3-year period. And the overall impact is that it reduced the value of that land to 10% of its previous value. The Raft River Aquifer has a very dual element to it. The northern basin has seen more significant groundwater declines. It's also the more productive area of the aquifer and deeper. The southern basin has less significant declines. The aquifer recharges more readily because it's closer to the water supply in those areas. The total aquifer deficit is unknown at this point, although the current hydrologic characterization will help address that. The last estimate was 103,000 acre feet, and that was estimated in 1966. And the majority of that value was because of underflow from the Raft River into the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer that was considered lost to the basin. However, in that 1970 report, it was noted that when groundwater levels declined 150 feet or more along Township Range 11 South, it would be expected that the groundwater would be salvaged from the outflow. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this 11 South line is right here along this boundary. And at that boundary, those groundwater levels have exceeded 150 feet of decline. And so it is anticipated that the current research will be finding that a portion of the groundwater outflow is being salvaged for groundwater use within the basin. So the actual aquifer deficit is likely between 36,000 and 120,000 acre feet annually. And we will find out more about that as research continues. Excuse me, let me get my clicker over. So just a little more on the aquifer difference between the northern and southern portion of the basin. So the southern portion of the basin is the gray line, and we can see that the declines are much lower. It's actually a little bit less than 1 foot a year on average, whereas the southern basin has a steeper decline and is consistently losing approximately 2.3 feet per year. So the impacts of groundwater declines are more severe for the northern basin, and that's why the Raft River Recharge Group has been so proactive, because they are the bottom of the basin and experience amplification of all the impacts upstream on their operations and groundwater pumping. Groundwater recharge was evaluated within the Raft River feasibility study completed by Brockway in 2015. And it is anticipated that groundwater recharge will significantly benefit the northern portion of the basin. Those yellow circles were approximately recharge locations that were modeled with the simplified groundwater model at the time of the feasibility study. And then the contours just show how the water would mound within that area as a result of recharge at those locations. So overall, the Raft River Recharge Group and partners proposed to build a pipeline to divert water from the Snake River to reduce groundwater declines, improve access, to provide opportunity for soft conversion and prevent future curtailment. In summary, the Raft River Watershed Plan includes projects to construct a pump station and suction lines at the Snake River that then connect with a 13-mile long pipeline that extends from north to south to deliver approximately 100 CFS of water, which would be 70 CFS of recharge water, and the opportunity to provide soft conversion water on top of that capacity. There would also be flood control and recharge basins along the Raft River floodplain to provide for 620 acre feet of detention and recharge within those basins. Construct debris basins along Hegler Creek to control for flood and sediment. Construct the substation to support the project and improve existing diversions to flood channels along Raft River, Cassia Creek, and the Middle Fork of Cassia Creek. Finally, there would be bank stabilization and restoration along Hegler Creek to also reduce sediment load during flood events. The recharge locations are within the water right permit, and they would be within locations shown in blue in the map. So there's a place of use for the recharge. Recharge would then be rotated around the northern portion of the basin to evenly distribute the benefits of recharge for the area. So in summary, the benefits of the project are to provide for delivery of surface water to reduce groundwater diversions, stabilize groundwater levels by recharging the aquifer directly, and improve water quality by decreasing sediment loads in the Raft River and tributaries to prevent damage to the Minidoka Wildlife Refuge. So I just wanted to go through the funding that the project has secured to date. The main source of funding for the project is through a very unique program called the USDA NRCS Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Program, PL 83566. There are 3 phases to this program. The first phase is the environmental phase. The second phase is the design. And then the third phase is construction. The match for the first 2 phases is 100%. So the NRCS pays for all of the environmental assessment and the design of the project. An environmental assessment is required because of the extent of the project and that the project does not fall under existing programmatic exemptions that the NRCS has. The design can start once the NRCS National Office has provided programmatic approval of the project, which we expect to happen within the next 3 to 4 months. And then construction can start once design has been approved at the 90% level by NRCS. So the program will fund up to $25 million in construction for the project. At that level, it would require $6.25 million in match for the agricultural projects, or 25%. The project is sponsored by the Raft River Flood District, and it's co-sponsored by the Raft River Recharge Group and the Raft River Electric. The Raft River Recharge Group also pursued a loan through the Idaho Water Resources Board Water Projects Loan Program. They requested a 20-year repayment schedule, and they were provided an interest rate of 4.75%. The loan of $14.1 million was approved with security to be provided by developing a Raft River Irrigation District entity that would hold and repay the loan. So overall, the funding for the project, most of the funding is provided by the NRCS Phase 3 construction phase of the PL 83566 program. The Phase 2 design was estimated to be about $3.25 million. The Raft River Recharge Group provides about 13% of the project in cash. The Raft River Electric will provide about 3% in cash match for the substation. And then the Idaho Water Resources Board loan, which is will be through the Raft River Irrigation District, will be about 29% of the project. The total estimated cost of the project is roughly $49 million, and that estimate is based on the 30% design provided in the draft plan, environmental watershed plan, environmental assessment. These next tables have very small text, so I don't expect you to read them, but overall, it just breaks down the project costs. for the different parts of the project. So the flood control projects and water quality projects are about $7.2 million of the project. And the pipeline is about $25 million of the project. And the total agricultural portion of the project with the pump station is expected to be $42 million. So overall, the project is about 49 and some change to complete. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the Raft River Irrigation District formation. So the Raft River Recharge Group hired legal counsel to represent the Raft River Irrigation District and form the district. They prepared and submitted the petition to form the district in Cassia County. And that district election, there will be a special election in August for the district formation. The Raft River Irrigation District formation was a little complicated because some of the members of the recharge group were outside of the district boundaries. And so we developed 7 districts that will be represented by each member in the group. And those, the total number of acres were limited to 3,000 so that the directors could live outside of the district. Finally, I prepared a project status update. So we've talked about this previously, but there's a groundwater permit for groundwater recharge from the Snake River held by the Raft River Recharge Group. There's been a preliminary environmental review with Bureau of Reclamation and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They are cooperating agencies on the watershed plan EA that will be prepared by NRCS. The project was selected for funding through NRCS PL 83566 watershed program. The loan has been earmarked for the Raft River Irrigation District. They are working with the USDA NRCS, Bureau of Reclamation, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to complete the environmental assessment. The draft preliminary plan EA was submitted to the Idaho NRCS state office, and it's pending submittal to the National Watershed Management Center. That's actually expected to be done within just a few days. So overall, the whole project started in 2015. We are at the star locations on this. And so water supply, the group is working on storage water leases. On the funding side, we're working on the regional water sustainability list funding opportunity by communicating in this presentation. And then on the watershed plan environmental assessment, which is phase 1 of the PL 83566 funding, we are on the draft plan EA. And then final design is anticipated to follow programmatic approval of the watershed plan EA, which is anticipated in November. And then construction would follow in 2025 and 2026. So a little more detailed breakdown of that schedule. So we're right now in June. We expect programmatic approval in November of this year. The EA is then finalized after the programmatic approval. So that process would start with public notice and a scoping period. And then the final decision documents would be issued roughly 3 months after that in 2024. The design phase can start with programmatic approval of the draft watershed plan environmental assessment. That's anticipated to happen in November. This is much later than we originally anticipated, and those delays were unforeseen. It's been related to the watershed plan EA approval process at the state and national level. So some of the previous experiences with submittals, the rules have changed since that last submittal for JEB. So there was some delays there that weren't anticipated. The design schedule for the project is very tight. It's expected to be a 1-year design schedule from design start until bid, which would be very tight for a project of this size. But we think that the Raft River Recharge Group will be able to meet that schedule. And it's anticipated that they would be bidding in December of 2024. The construction schedule would follow bidding, or sorry, the bidding schedule would follow the design schedule with bidding to be completed by February of 2025 for construction in 2025 and then going into 2026 during the non-irrigation season. So that's a very quick overview of the schedule. I've got just three minutes left. So overall, the project is on the regional water sustainability list. The Raft River Recharge Group and partners would like to see that the project is maintained on the regional water sustainability list. It would be helpful to see it upgraded as a priority by the Idaho Water Resources Board for the list. I think that as the project moves along, the purpose and need will be demonstrated to the Idaho Water Resources Board. We would like to see the project reviewed as ARPA fundable by the Department of Water Resources. It is a tributary aquifer to the Eastern Snake Plain Aquifer. And that information will be available pending groundwater hydrologic framework and modeling. And then the group and partners would like to pursue grant funding for the entire project. For a portion of the project through the Idaho Water Resources Board. They had previously pursued the project as aging infrastructure, but were disqualified as not qualifying as aging infrastructure. They are currently on the list for the regional water sustainability. And if designated as ARPA fundable, they may be funded, a portion of the project may be fundable as groundwater recharge. So going back to the project funding overview, the portion of the project that the group is looking for support on is related to the loan elements that they've have earmarked. And that's roughly 29% of the project. It would be important for the Idaho Water Resources Board to determine if the project is qualified for ARPA funding, because a significant portion of the project related to the flood control projects would be then considered groundwater recharge. And then they would also like to have an opportunity for either loan forgiveness or grant conversion of the loan through the Regional Water Sustainability Program. They would like to see guidance on program requirements and opportunities to guide that process. The importance of this money is that they cannot pursue any additional federal funding opportunities for this project because of the limitations on matching federal dollars to federal dollars, and the NRCS funding levels are higher than other programs. And so they wouldn't be able to go to WaterSmart or any additional program for more grant funding. When they pursued the loan, it was a backstop to the grant funding efforts to ensure the project is built. And so ultimately they're pursuing grants in the amount of the loan to complete the project, because they are also providing cash match to the project for the original agricultural water projects. So with that, I'm 47 seconds over, which I think is a miracle. And I wanted to provide opportunity for questions.
Yeah, are there any questions for Hattie? I have one question. Why is it the groundwater district is not part of the watershed plan?
So ultimately, we talked a little bit about how the northern basin and the southern basin have different groundwater declines. And so the groundwater district doesn't move as quickly or as cohesively as the Raft River Recharge Group does. And so the Raft River Recharge Group has been moving forward as quickly as possible with the project, and the groundwater district has been supporting them as they can. Is that a good way to describe that, Ryan?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. The groundwater district also saw some difficulties with getting all the members on board and supporting the whole project, where the project was technically just for the northern part of the basin and not the whole basin itself. So the groundwater district has been working on just more of the retention ponds and recharge ponds in the southern end of the basin to try to support the aquifer that way. And then we've been just supporting the recharge group with the pipeline project on the north end of the basin.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Jeff.
Yes. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hattie or Ryan, the way you went through and you broke down the cost of the project under the various components, is the grant funding, contingent, cost share, all that equally based across all the different components of the project, or is the grant funding more emphasized on the pipeline and the recharge and the pump station more so than the flood control?
So the projects can be constructed or not constructed. They're just being evaluated within the watershed plan EA. And so that's the total project goal, is to complete all of them. If the agricultural project costs more than is predicted, then the flood projects are probably going to be put on hold. And that is an impact to the overall watershed rehabilitation efforts. But the breakdown that I showed in this presentation includes all of those projects, because that's the goal of the different partners, is to get them all constructed. And the funding from the project is determined by the partners. So if the partners say we prioritize the agricultural project first, then that's what they'll use the $25 million towards for construction. But the design and environmental planning will be completed regardless.
Okay, but if you didn't have enough funding to do the flood control, that wouldn't reduce the amount of the grant money that's that you're eligible for?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. Sorry that took so long to answer.
Well, that's okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, Hattie, this is Brian. I guess, are you okay with non-committee members yet?
Yes, we're okay with anyone.
So Hattie, I've noticed Raft River's been running. Have you been able to capture that in your recharge basins, or is there some spilling into the Snake currently?
Well, I'm gonna partially answer that. So we just applied for a temporary water use for the flood district to divert water into one of the recharge ponds that's part of the Raft River project, but doesn't have an existing groundwater recharge permit from the Raft River. And so we're waiting to hear from the Department of Water Resources on that. They just received it on Monday. But the groundwater district is recharging in all of the recharge facilities that they have. And then Ryan can talk to that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the groundwater district has multiple recharge ponds on the southern end of the river, and we have been using all of those for over a month. Currently, the water had not been hitting the Snake River until just this past week. There have been a couple little intermittent flash floods out there that water did reach the river, but the actual stream flow had not been reaching the river and the Snake River until just this past week.
So very quick follow-up. If you are able to count this recharge, then does that reduce the number of the expansion acres that are curtailed this year, or is that calculated some different way?
Madam Chair, oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I didn't say, go ahead, answer that.
Madam Chair, Brian Olmstead. So there's no mitigation plan in place, and those acres are curtailed. And so no amount of recharge would enable them to be turned on at this point. And then I'll let Ryan follow up on that.
Yeah, that's correct, Hattie. That was the same statement I was going to make, that where we do not have a management plan in place or mitigation plan with the department currently, there is no way to work around the curtailment of those acres. They're permanently shut off at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, are we through with questions? Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Hattie and Ryan, for the presentation. And I think we're ready to move on to the next one.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next one, Madam Chair, is the Lost Valley Reservoir enlargement, and looks like Hal Anderson is ready to go.
All right, Hal, I'll turn the podium over to you.
Madam Chair, members of the board. Hopefully you're able to see my slides.
Yes.
Good. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to present today. The Lost Valley Dam Replacement and Enlargement. I've got Dale Barton and Irv Lean also attending the meeting here, and they're the guys that are doing a lot of the work to make this thing happen. So I'm just going to ask them as we go through this presentation if they have anything specifically to add, that they can just jump right in, if that would be okay, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're really, we've been working on this for a long time, and we're pretty excited about the possibility of getting this reservoir built, and we're looking for the future down the road of having a sustainable water supply for the Weiser Basin. So why is it important that this project go forward? First and foremost, it's a 100-year-old dam, and it needs to be replaced. It needs to be replaced not only for public safety issues, flooding issues, but also so there's a sustainable water supply for the future. It's long been a supported priority for the Water Board. It's the lowest cost new storage project in Idaho that we know of. The project is fully supported by local water users, legislators, county commissioners, and the Farm Bureau. So the current sponsor is a private reservoir company, Lost Valley Reservoir Company. It's a 3-person board. Dale and Irv are here. Doug McElvain is a 3rd member. There's going to be a 4th seat added. They're currently in the process of updating their bylaws. They have an attorney working with them on that, and that's to incorporate the Class D shares. Class D shares will be the new storage that is proposed for this project. Currently, the reservoir is 10,000 acre feet, and the enlargement would make the total capacity at 30,000 acre feet. The reservoir company has been around since 1925, and the Lost Valley Reservoir Company owns some of the land under the reservoir site, and the remainder of the land is U.S. Forest Service. So the project is located, Lost Valley Reservoir currently is it's between Council and New Meadows, actually a little bit closer to New Meadows. It's about 3 miles off Highway 95. The picture of the reservoir, it's a beautiful location, wonderful place to camp. The district ranger there for the New Meadows district says this is their highest use recreation site in the whole district. So like I mentioned before, we're talking about if this project goes forward, raising the water level by 30 feet, increase the storage from 10 to 30,000 acre feet. An estimated cost in 2023 dollars of just replacing the old dam at 10,000 acre feet is 3.7 million. But this project really provides the opportunity for additional storage water and replace the dam and outlet works to provide a sustainable future water supply in the Weiser Basin. So this shows the footprint of the existing dam in blue, and if the enlargement goes forward, the area that's in red will be inundated by the new reservoir. You see, it's pretty steep area. You will get the area where you're losing the most amount of additional land around the existing reservoir site is in the upper portion along the inflow creek. So this is a picture of what the dam looks like. The water level is down. This is at the end of the irrigation season. But you can see that the concrete and the dam itself is really ready to be replaced. So this is a timeline of where what's been accomplished so far. The application for enlargement was made back in '93. Protests filed. Hearing. We had a hearing in '99. The Lost Valley Reservoir Company signed an agreement with Idaho Water Engineering in 2013. We made presentations in 14 before the Water Board. We had one of the main issues that's held up this entire project has been an issue of the northern Idaho ground squirrel. It's a threatened species, and it lives near and around the existing reservoir. In 2020, thanks to the board's action on this, the board signed a subordination resolution to subordinate their water right at Galloway as we move forward, if we move forward to completion of this project. So the Lost Valley Reservoir Board has requested subordination. The Water Board agreed to that subordination, and the advantages of doing that were listed here. Beneficial summer flows, carryover storage was potential in the Lost Valley Reservoir. It could work in tandem with the Galloway, even if Galloway is built. It's a low-cost storage, and without this subordination, really, the Lost Valley Reservoir expansion could not go forward. But thankfully, the board agreed to that subordination and signed the subordination agreement in July of 2020. The support for this project has been quite robust. It's included certainly in the state water plan specifically. And the state water plan identifies Lost Valley as a reservoir site with high potential for development. House Joint Memorial number 8, approved in 2008, included specific mention of the Lost Valley dam site. So far, the board has been very supportive of the project. They funded the initial feasibility work back in '92 that led to the application. In 2017, they provided funding for the Lost Valley Creek and reservoir measuring devices in the tune of $16,000. And in 2019, the board funded the Northern Idaho Ground Squirrel Study in the amount of $30,000. So the board is, and the reservoir company is very thankful to the board for their support to date. We also have letters of support from the Ada County Commissioners, the Washington County Commissioners, the Snake River Development Alliance, which is the economic development entity for Washington County. The Farm Bureau Policy 16 specifically supports this project and mentions the raising of Lost Valley as one of its priorities that they support. So let's talk a little bit about the dollars here. In 1992, it was estimated to be about $2 to $2.5 million to enlarge the dam. In 2020, that number was up to $9 million. We're now looking currently at, and this is just for the construction costs, not the pre-construction costs. In 2026, we're looking at 13.5 million. That's including anticipated inflation. This is a project that was high on the priority list for our previous chairman of the Water Board, Joe Jordan. This was the one that he thought was the best site in Idaho and the least cost for additional storage in the state. So this is a spreadsheet here that shows the costs associated with the dam construction, both the pre-construction and estimated total construction cost. So the construction mitigation, construction cost about 13.5 million, pre-construction cost in the neighborhood of 1.17 million. And by the way, the construction cost does include $1.5 million for mitigation. We assume that there's going to be some mitigation requirements associated with the ground squirrel and possibly for wetland loss. So the cost of this per shareholders, there's 16,000 shares available in the expansion. That the construction funds that are needed to be of the 13,500,000 results in a construction cost of around $840 an acre foot, which is very reasonable cost for new storage these days. And it is assumed that the board will typically provide the bonding and the funds for a long-term loan. So the interest rate's at 3%, it may be more. But if it is assuming 3% loan from the board for the construction cost, then the annual cost would be $36 an acre foot if we had a 40-year term on the repayment period. And these are just estimated cost. So the funding plan at this date, currently there are 3 existing share groups, classes A, B, and C shares that total around 10,000 acre feet. The 20,000, the class D shares for the enlargement would be 20,000 class D shares, and that's would be created with the enlargement. So each share is currently for an acre foot. The annual fill is not guaranteed, as we all know, but the average basin yield is around 26,000 acre feet, or possibly a little more. But in the in year of 2021, which was a relatively dry year, we had 20,000 acre feet available to fill the reservoir. So that would have been the initial A, B, and C shares plus 10,000 acre feet of the class D shares. So the offerings to date for the additional storage were to existing shareholders, were given the first crack at it. Other water users in the Weiser Basin were also provided an opportunity, and we've had interest in both of those, and I'll go through those numbers in a little bit more. The board was also offered additional storage if they were interested in it, and then fourthly, there were others that had expressed interest and knew about the project and had requested interest if there was water available. Currently, we have 4,000 shares that are available for project development. 16,000 shares are going to be sharing in the cost of the enlargement. The pre-construction funds that are needed, this is a ask for the board, not all of this, but 50% of the 1.12 million are needed for pre-construction costs. That would include the NEPA work, funding for the Forest Service, and final engineering. The water board is requested to provide matching funds for the pre-construction costs so we can get moving, and we are ready to move ahead on this just as soon as we can. The remaining preliminary investment will be around $35 a share for the Class D shares. So it does not guarantee a success. So this is at-risk money because we can't determine in advance whether the EIS will be successful. We think it will be because we've studied this, and it looks like there is potential mitigation for the northern Idaho ground squirrel that could successfully be implemented. So this is kind of a summary of where we are as far as the shares available and the cost. We currently have 50 individuals that have expressed in the Weiser Basin that have expressed interest in acquiring the 16,000 portion of the 16,000 available shares. We have a remaining 5,674 shares that could be available, plus the 4,000 shares that are reserved for the developers, and that has been offered to the state of Idaho. But if the state is not does not want to acquire that storage, then it will be marketed elsewhere. I just want to let you know that we have been in contact with the American Falls Aberdeen Groundwater District, and they have expressed a verbal interest in acquiring every remaining share that would be available. So we have, one of the things that we needed to do was actually determine the yield. It was years ago in the early 90s, initial calculations were were done by A&B Engineering. Joe Jordan worked with them to come up with yield estimates. They estimated an annual yield of the basin to be 29,000 acre feet. And we had Steve Lipscomb, retired USGS hydrologist and chief of their hydrology section, do two different methods to determine the annual yield, and he came up with 25,000 acre feet or 28,000 acre feet. So it looks like there's a high yield in the watershed, and majority of the time, at least 50% of the time, majority of the D shares would be able to fill on an annual basis. So where can the water be used? It can be used certainly in the Weiser Basin. It can be used upstream in the Snake River Basin by exchange, replacing salmon flow augmentation. And that's exactly why the American Falls Aberdeen Groundwater District is interested in the water that they would like to acquire in the Weiser Basin in exchange for salmon flow augmentation from the Upper Snake. And so it is because of that opportunity, there's been interest by others in acquiring a storage in the Lost Valley Reservoir expansion. What we're looking at now is a schedule. Is to obtain a $560,000 grant from the Idaho Water Resource Board to move ahead with the NEPA work and final design activities, pre-construction activities. And then once we get done with the NEPA work and the engineering design, then to move ahead and making financial arrangements with the board for the other $13.5 million in the form of a loan. We'll prepare the final engineering RFP and go out for construction, select the construction company, construct the project with the idea of storing and delivering water in the spring of 2027. So the type of assistance needed by the board at this time, this is a little bit of a summary here for you. Provide matching funds for the next step. If we can get the matching funds from the board of 560,000, then we will meet with the stockholders that want the additional storage and assess them for the other half of the EIS and pre-engineering work. One of the things that's really important is for the state, for water board to determine if they want to move ahead to acquire the 5,674 acre feet of Class D shares that are available and the 4,000 acre feet project development shares, or if they would prefer that be offered to other entities. So as soon as y'all can make that decision, that would be helpful for us to know. That's all I have as far as the project goes. Thank you. I'm open for questions, and both Dale and Irv are here to answer any specific questions that you might have regarding to the Lost Valley Reservoir Company.
Thank you, Hal. Are there any questions?
Joanne,
Mark Gibbs, I have a question.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. How those yield figures on the storage, were those numbers calculated before, or we've been doing cloud seeding, and are we cloud seeding that basin? And could those numbers be boosted by continued or enhanced cloud seeding efforts?
Board Member Gibbs, good to see, good to hear from you. No, we're not cloud seeding in the Weiser Basin that I know of. With their cloud seeding in the Payette and the Boise, but not the Weiser that I know of. I think there is that possibility, Mark, if cloud seeding were to move into that area, it probably would be something that could be accomplished, but there's currently not cloud seeding going on in that basin.
Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, did you have a question?
yeah, a couple, Joanne, if I could. Hal, you mentioned that there's entities interested out there in purchasing storage and doing an exchange
Yes, sir.
with flowog water. Have you had any conversations with Bureau of Reclamation to see how amenable they would be to granting those exchanges?
We've only had initial discussions, Jeff, nothing serious at this point. We know that that's happened in other situations. But you know, that's one of the things that in the pre-construction that if we were moving ahead on this, that we would need to move forward on pretty quickly.
And then a follow-up, Joanne, I think we did that subordination agreement with a sunset clause in it. I need my memory refreshed. Maybe Brian can help. When was that going to sunset? How many years after we signed that?
I believe it was. Go ahead, Brian. This is I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead, Hal. I was just gonna answer. I don't recall, but I think it was either a 3 or a 5 year window.
I agree with you, Brian. It's one of the, it's 3 or 5.
Well, if it's 3, we probably need to review that and see if we want to grant an extension to that subordination agreement or not, because it looks like that's coming up.
I've just been told by one of my team that it was a 3 year window.
Okay, that might be something we might want to put on the agenda for our July board meeting, Brian.
Okay, got it.
Chairman Raybould, thanks.
Okay. All right, that's all I have at the moment.
Madam Chair, this is Al Barker. I have a question for Hal, if I may.
Go ahead.
So Hal, you said that the Lost Valley raise was approved or mentioned or something in the state water plan. And one of the things we've been doing is looking at what we want to do to update, if anything, in the state water plan. So I happened to look at it, and I didn't actually see Lost Valley mentioned in the state water plan. I did see the Weiser Galloway dam raise, or the dam mentioned. So can you kind of point me to where I can find that?
As I recall, Mr. Barker and Madam Chair, it's in the list of potential projects that were in the state water plan.
Okay, but it's not with the Snake River Basin new storage section. So that's where I was looking. So I'll keep.
Yeah. I'll look for it myself, Chair, Mr. Barker.
All right.
But I'm recalling it being in the list of projects that storage projects that were of interest to the board.
Yeah, if you could find that and let us know, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? I have one question. How engaged has the Forest Service been in your conversations about NEPA work?
Madam Chair, that's a really good question. We're now, since we started this process, on our third district ranger. Seems like we get moving ahead with a district ranger and they move on to other jobs. We currently have, in the past, we've had the previous district ranger was pretty supportive, and we were moving ahead in that discussion. They always have a hard time saying that they can move ahead very quickly because of staffing issues. We have money in our budget for offsetting the cost to the Forest Service, but they're amenable to the project. In fact, they've developed campgrounds and toilet facilities and everything else out there on the site with the idea that this enlargement would take place. So there wouldn't be any significant impact to the existing Forest Service recreation facilities out there with the dam raised. So I think they're supportive of it. They like the idea of having a larger reservoir out there because it is one of their primary recreation areas. Of course, their concern, one of their bigger concern is the ESA related issues for the ground squirrel.
Okay, thank you. If there's no, Dale, did you have a question? No. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. Thank you, Hal, for the presentation, and thank you to the board members who participated in today with that presentation. It was definitely encouraging and enlightening.
Sure. Thank you.
I think we're ready to move on to the next one.
Next one, Madam Chair, is the Mackey Dam Repair Project.
And who do we have today presenting for the Mackey Dam Repair Project?
I think Ted Sorensen looks like he's getting ready to roll here.
Okay, welcome, Ted. The
Good
floor is
morning.
yours.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Thank you for your time. I didn't know I was presenting this morning, so ours will be brief. I'm here today representing Lost River Irrigation District, and they own the Mackey Dam, which is just north of Mackey, Idaho, and collects waters from the Big Lost River. Mackey Dam is an old dam and has a colorful history. And if I'm allowed to share screen, I could probably show a picture or two here. This is a picture of the spillway.
We're not seeing the pictures yet.
Oh,
There we go.
yeah, okay. There's a picture of the spillway. It's in bad condition. As a lot of irrigation facilities I visit in the state, a lot of them are there by habit. We were there week before last investigating, and there was evidence here of uplift in this floor here when the water comes over the spillway. So it needs to be addressed fairly soon. Let's see if I can find another picture here. And we also have an intake tower here. And surprisingly, we found that intake tower in very good condition, but the gates are in very bad condition in terms of needing to be repaired and upgraded with operators. We were initially approached by Byron Pearson and members of their board to take a look at putting a hydroelectric plant on the Mackey Dam in order to defray some of the costs of the dam repairs. And we looked at that for about 6 months, And our conclusion is the basic economics of a hydroelectric plant on Mackey Dam coupled with the regulatory requirements that the district would take on from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we concluded that they should not put a hydro on it. It wasn't feasible to do. And so here in the last month, they've retained us to do the engineering work to replace the spillway and to reinforce the control tower and upgrade the gates. And that's what we're beginning to do. Our current budget here, I have it up on the screen. I don't know if you could see it, is some $7.3 million. And our goal is to go to work on the spillway when the late summer 2024, go to work on the intake tower when they can drain the reservoir, which would be like October 2024, and have all this work done by spring of 2025. And that's all that I know. We are going to help them apply for a Department of Energy 247 grant, which is for dam safety enhancement. We're going to help them apply for that this summer. And I think they've got $2 million in the kitty, and I don't know where they're looking to raise the rest of the money. But all that I know is that we're committed to help them. And I don't know if Byron Pearson's on. He may want to jump in and say a few more words, but that's our presentation. I'm new to this. I'm new to coming to the board, and that's my story. Now, if I can figure out how to unshare, I don't know how to stop. I'll take any questions, Madam Chairman.
Are there any questions?
Joanne, this is Jeff. I thought there was some actual dam repair component to this project, Ted. And I thought there was an opportunity to access some FEMA money to help with that.
Jeff, I think that's a good question. And I don't know the answer to that question. I'm hoping Byron or Lucas are on the phone. I think they've applied for some FEMA money, Jeff, to do some of the dam repair, and there's actually emergency spillway they want to work on. What we're focused on and helping them know is the control tower and the main spillway. The main spillway is the one that concerns me the most.
Okay, so all right, so we're really looking at two things with Mackey: potentially rebuilding the dam itself or making extensive repairs to the dam. And then the things that you've pointed out, the spillway's got some serious problems, and the outlet gates need updated.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's the one they've asked us to focus on, and I'm not really up to speed on the rest of them, Jeff. Sorry.
Well, that's okay, because there was a number of $10 million floating around for Mackey Dam, and I thought that was funding to refurbish the dam itself. So I guess we need to drill down and get more information and find out whether we're looking at a $10 million project or if we're actually looking at a $17 million project.
I did see some of the numbers in there, Jeff, and the $10 million project was inclusive of what we've done here. And I roughly saw about half of it was dam repair and half of it was spillway. But those were old numbers, and in the last 3 years, we've had a lot of inflation. So that's the reason I've upped the budget on the tower repair and the spillway repair to about 7.3.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Ted.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Al.
Ted, do you know if Mackey Dam is a CARI Act project and when it was constructed? Because there may be some federal funding available through some other legislation that has recently passed, if it is.
Yeah, you kind of broke up what your question. There was two questions there. When it was constructed and the type of dam, and I didn't hear.
No, not the type of dam. Is it a CARI Act project? constructed under federal authority of the CARE Act?
I don't believe so. I believe from my brief read of history, it was Utah Construction, and it was a private development, much like
Yeah,
the
but
Twin Falls project. It wasn't a carry. So I don't think so, Al, but I don't know for sure.
Well, Ted, can you make sure you convey that to your folks there, because it's important, if they are a CARE Act project, that there may be other sources of funding for them to have access to. And the fact that it was constructed privately doesn't mean doesn't take it out of CARE Act. In fact, that's what the CARE Act was for.
Oh, okay. And when it was constructed in the 1920s. But I will convey that back to them, Mr. Barker. Thank you. We'll find out.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. This is Lucas Yockey and Byron Pearson calling in. I apologize for that. We had some technical difficulties trying to get unmuted there. So due to some scheduling conflicts here, we just had to call in, but we're here to answer any questions, and sounds like we missed out on a few, but we're here now. Thank you, and we apologize for that.
We had some specific questions related to the repair of the dam. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, so I believe one gentleman asked if there was any actual repairs to the dam itself, and there is not going to be, no. It's just the outlet tower and the spillway. The dam itself is an earthen dam, and it's actually completely oversized. It was when in the initial construction phase, when it was originally built, it was going to be a much taller dam, and then they quit at the current level it's at now. So it has a much larger footprint and much thicker for an earthen dam than it would actually be required for its size. So the dam itself, the construction of it, it's still in really good shape. The only concerns are how it passes the water. So whether that water comes through the outlet works or the spillway. Excellent.
That resolves some issues. It looks like it's a $7 million project instead of a 17.
Yeah, is there anything else we missed?
Madam Chair, this is Dean Stevenson.
Yes.
Just as a side question here, obviously that neighborhood is seismically active. Has FEMA or anybody done any analysis work to see how that dam shapes up seismically?
Well, I'm not specifically sure about FEMA or any studies that have done to that. It has been through multiple earthquakes, one being a pretty major one, and there hasn't been any notable changes or any effects to it that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Lucas, there was a question raised is if we are aware that we could, or funding been applied to FEMA. That was a question.
I'm sorry, Ted, could you repeat that?
Yeah, one of the board members wondered if we'd applied to FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, for any funding.
Okay, this is Byron. We applied to FEMA 3 years ago. We have a grant into them as we speak right now. I just contacted them this morning. We were supposed to know something in June through FEMA, but now they have stuck us off until July the 15th, which is nothing unusual. They just keep backing you up, but we have not heard anything through them. We was going to get accepted last year, and somehow something got crossways and said we was applying for 2 grants. And we are applying. What we're trying to do is, this valley is very strapped. That reservoir is very, very important to 48,000 acres. So we are going to try accepting any money we can get the quickest possible way, because we are on one of 9 dams here in the state of Idaho that they are thinking of condemning, and we're just trying to get any way we can. That's one reason we hired Ted Sorensen. He is very good at what he does. And, but FEMA has got an application into him. We just not heard back from him.
Okay, Byron, can I get a clarification on that? Is the FEMA application for the spillway or for the dam?
Both. It's a conjunction of a spillway
And an outlet tower.
and the outlet tower, and to repair the gates on the outlet tower. And
Okay,
their
but
bid go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
When we first put in for FEMA, we had McMillan and Jacobs out of Utah do a preliminary, and those was the figures that they come up with, was around 10 million. So that's what we submitted to FEMA. But since then, I think Ted he showed us there, and I've got a copy of it here. It looks like we can do this project for a whole lot less money now. So, and I'm hoping that's the fact. But I'm trying my darndest to see where we can get the money the quickest way possible is what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. All right, are there any other questions for our presenters on the Mackey Dam spillway and intake? All right, well, thank you for sharing that information with us today.
Hey, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate yours. We're on to the last presentation, Elmore County Mountain Home Plateau. And who do we have presenting for that project today?
I'll go ahead and take the lead, Madam. Is this on? Can you hear me?
You just go ahead and push the button and.
Okay, I got it. Madam Chair, board members, I'd like to, start off with just saying thanks. We appreciate you letting us take a little time here to present and give you guys a little bit of an update of what's going on exciting in Elmore County. So yeah, Brian, Neely, Cynthia, it's been a while. We definitely know you guys are always behind the scenes doing a lot of hard work, and that means a lot to us. So today, with us, we have our legal counsel, Shondi Lott, Carrie Hill, and of course, Terry Scanlon. And I'd like to just start out with a little bit of a brief overview. As you're aware, we have started years ago trying to come up with options and ways to improve the water situation in Elmore County, which is very, very difficult to do, and it's quite the undertaking. But we have taken some huge strides, and a lot of positive things have happened over the years, and we're definitely excited to continue that forward progress. With that being said, we had a great year with recharge. I think that's important to note. And one thing that I just wanted to throw out there, it was nice to see some water this year, and we definitely moved a lot of it with the help and support of the funding and the opportunities that you guys have helped provide Elmore County. And that means a lot to us. So as you're aware, we are working on the South Fork of the Boise River Diversion Project, where we're going to bring water from Anderson Dam up into the Little Camas Reservoir and try to move the water down through the irrigation system with the Mountain Home, in conjunction with the Mountain Home Irrigation District. There's, I think approximately 40 miles of canal systems and different reservoirs. There's, Little Camas and Long Tom and the Mountain Home Reservoir. And it's quite an elaborate works, but it works very well and has for quite some time. So that's kind of an overview in the general setting. A lot of you have seen the location and seen some of the works there. So
with that being said, I think, you know, we're really excited to have that move forward. One thing that we've also done, and I think it's important to note, is that we hired a historian to put together a report on the history of water in Elmore County. I don't have a copy of that with me today, but I'm sure we can get it emailed out from either Terry or Carrie to your group. It's an extremely detailed report. It shows from the very beginning. It starts in 1891 at the history of water and water being brought in or trying to be brought into the Elmore County area. And through the report, you'll see quite an interesting story unfold from prior to the dams being built, Anderson Dam, and a lot of these large projects that you see around the state. Elmore County has been talked about extensively in every one of those projects, starting in 1891. They put together a coalition, a group of folks that was called, I think it was the Water Coalition or something like that, from the very beginning there in Mount Home, and started advocating to bring water into that area. And I'm really excited for all of you to read that and see it. We will get it delivered to you in the very, very near future, and let you take a little bit of time and review the history, because I think that's important, and it tells quite a story there. And again, it's something that I think is definitely worth the read. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Terry Scanlon and let him and Carrie speak briefly on some of the things that we've done and the outcomes and where we're trying to get to. So thank you.
Thanks, Bud. Terry Scanlon, HDR Engineering. As you can see from this slide, this is really, why do we need water in Elmore County? And as Bud mentioned, there's been plans to bring water into Elmore County for 100+ years, and fairly advanced plans going into the 1970s to bring water from the Boise River system into Elmore County. They seem to have fizzled out in the 70s for some reason. At that point, groundwater development occurred on the Mountain Home Plateau. Most of the groundwater development was between 1965 and 1980. Approximately 25,000 acres were brought into agricultural production. But that quickly stopped because of aquifer sustainability problems with the formation of the Cinder Cone Butte critical area in 1981 and the overall groundwater management area, the Mountain Home groundwater management area in 1982. Since that time, really, there's been very little groundwater development in the southern portion of Elmore County. And as most of you know, the board sponsored or funded a large portion of a study that we did in Elmore County back in 2016, 2017, and we looked at these water level declines and opportunities for bringing water in or to help stop these declines. And what we did see there was that the declines vary by area. There's been 100 to 200 feet in the Cinder Cone Butte area, 75 to 100 feet south of Mountain Home, and 70 to 90 feet around Mountain Home Air Force Base. But interesting enough, there's been no decline north of Mountain Home, where there's been incidental recharge from the Mountain Home Irrigation District with water brought in from the system we're going to talk about today, and also near Mayfield, where there really hasn't been much in the way of groundwater development. So the project we're talking about today, and we're just really here to give you an update on what we're doing, is the South Fork Boise River project. As I mentioned, we had a study in 2017 that was 2/3 funded by the board. Out of that came alternatives for bringing water in, either from the South Fork Boise or from the Snake River. The county commissioners have been primarily pursuing the South Fork project. They received approval of a water right permit for 200 CFS back in 2018 or 2019. They still have a pending application for water from the Snake River. They also received approval of a permit for recharge from Canyon Creek at that time. So specifically on the South Fork Boise River project, what it proposes is to pump water out of Anderson Ranch Reservoir up to Little Camas Reservoir, which is about 800 feet above Anderson. From Little Camas, it would flow through the Mountain Home Irrigation District Canal. It's about 13 miles until it crosses through the last of, I think, 13 or 15 tunnels. And that tunnel takes it into the Canyon Creek drainage, and it flows through the natural drainage of Canyon Creek, Long Tom Creek, Long Tom Reservoir to the Mountain Home area, where it could be used for supplemental irrigation within the Mountain Home Irrigation District, or for groundwater recharge. Both of those approved uses under our water right permit. The Canyon Creek recharge facilities, as Bud mentioned, are currently functioning using natural flow out of the Canyon Creek drainage, but that's a very limited supply, maybe on average 1,000 acre feet or so a year. But we're using them to the full extent that we can, and as Bud says, we appreciate the board's support in getting those facilities constructed and operating. Some specifics on the current project out of the south, or out of Anderson. It's about almost 14,000 feet of pipe, 48-inch diameter currently proposed. Although we've got a permit for 200 CFS, we've scaled back the project to 50 to 70 CFS, and that's what that 48-inch pipe would convey, and that's more suited for the existing capacity of the Mountain Home Irrigation District Canal, and it contemplates that we'll be able to get storage out of Anderson so that we can run off just more than just flood water. The pump station would have 5 to 7 pumps, 1,500 horsepower, 4,500 gallons per minute each. We're currently studying power supply alternatives to support the pump station, along with other preliminary engineering that's ongoing. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Hill. She's going to talk about kind of what's going on right now and into the near future.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Carrie Hill with Panorama Environmental. HDR is working on a preliminary engineering report style document that we received a Idaho DEQ wastewater planning grant for this last fiscal year. Aqua recharge falls under the wastewater rules. So we've appreciated that. And that's really going to it's going to support the pumping alternatives and look at the specifics of inline pumps versus potentially a platform setup. He mentioned the power alternatives will also be included in that, and that it includes Idaho Power and Bonneville Power Administration coordination, as well as access roads, staging areas, and it'll provide us a more detailed cost estimate for alternatives specific to pumping to consider. We've also initiated the preliminary environmental work with NEPA fieldwork and studies getting going. The Forest Service would be the lead federal agency. We do anticipate an environmental impact statement with this one. They have been very, very cooperative, encouraging of the project, and actually waived any cost recovery fees for us. So they're very supportive of the project so far. We will do a wetland delineation, biological surveys for botany this summer, and then cultural this fall. So we'll be ready to roll into officially kicking off NEPA in 2024. The county has also been actively engaged in community outreach and education, understanding that this is a big project. These are decisions that are going to impact generations of Elmore County residents. And it's important to know where the community is at and just what they understand about their water, as well as to use as an opportunity to start educating the public. So that's open on the county's website, and we're collecting data and responses from that countywide. That data will be used to host some open house style community meetings and facilitate just better targeted education. The survey was put together in conjunction with good partnership with the city and the Air Force bases. That's obviously major stakeholders of the groundwater in the area. Let's see, we can go to the next slide, please. We'll talk a little bit about estimated costs and funding. Terry mentioned that we had scaled back the project. We had it up in that $50 million preliminary range, and 30 to 40 is a little bit easier to swallow, but we are looking at that $30 to $40 million range. The alternatives report will narrow that down for us, of course, but with that, we understand, and that's for the capital costs. The funding sources for this type of project are challenging. We are going to be looking at a local, state, federal conglomerate. For state alternate options, we were looking at potentially using IDWR, IDEQ. Has said that they would like to fund more for recharge. Competing for the existing money is challenging. So we have been working with DEQ, and they're advocating at the state level to try to recognize that for recharge is a state, across the state, there's multiple projects that could be benefit from a kind of a new pool of money or something that make us a little more competitive and not compete against also important drinking water and wastewater projects. At the federal level, we've had preliminary conversations, just at really high level, because we don't have our detailed alternatives yet, but just probing what might be out there in existing pools of money. We've talked to Reclamation, we've talked to EPA and looking at the WIFIA program, and then USDA Rural Development as well. But of course, we are open to others, NRCS potentially, and we'll talk to anybody. So that would be capital costs, the O&M costs, recognizing that this is a big pump station with a cost associated long-term. They're looking at setting up some sort of taxing district and then generate the revenue from taxes, as well as we've presented previously about a potential hydropower option, which would be a separate project from the pump station and pipeline. But that has the preliminary consideration of that has shown it to be feasible and could offset the pumping costs with the project. Go to the next slide, please. We have a conceptual schedule. I do want to emphasize conceptual because we have a lot of variables that play into this. And as everybody's aware, there's a lot of water happenings in Mountain Home or in the Elmore County area. So we are considering everything going along, and just cumulatively that it's a lot to coordinate. The engineering up top, you see our preliminary engineering working through this year. That's that report I spoke of. And then the environmental runs a little bit separate of that. So when we consider, we'll have these alternatives in this, we'll have a good project description and everything to work from that preliminary design. But then there are multiple things that we have to kind of consider as risks to the project and coordination efforts. One is Bonneville Power Administration is going to bring in a new transmission line, and the pump station or the substation at the bottom of Anderson, that Dixie Creek substation, will not be able to be used for this project. Bonneville Power says they do not want to deal with that small of a power source, and they are not interested in upgrading it, and Idaho Power does not want to deal with buying it and upgrading it. So we are dependent on BPA bringing a new transmission line, which Idaho Power would then connect into and bring a new substation over. So that was new in the last couple of weeks. So we thought we better incorporate that because it's a long-term project, as well as there's just a 2-year lead time on ordering transformers right now. So a lot of consideration there. And then the dam raise construction, obviously, we would be needing to use the same roads and areas, and it's not clear yet whether or not we could coordinate some sort of joint access and things like that. We're just considering that right now. We understand the risks and the coordination needed, but we're not ready to enter those talks or anything yet. Just also considering where the dam raise EIS is at in their project. Timeline is important to us. With those other two factors drawn out, it does bring in that the Mountain Home Plateau groundwater model that was incorporated into the recent groundwater modeling effort for the area. We could potentially be seeing them putting that together in 2026, and then results in 2027 was the last that we saw of that upgrade, of the updates there. We do know, we've heard them gathering data from local wells and measuring and whatnot, so we know the data gathering is happening, and that would really help inform us on where the real beneficiaries are, and would help our district formation potential, things like that. The environmental track that I mentioned will run separately. We will continue moving forward with NEPA. We think that'll allow us to be essentially shovel ready. Knowing we have these other factors out there, unless there's any big environmental changes or project feature changes, the NEPA could be ready. We'd be ready for funding or construction. It would just allow the project to be to hit the ground running with the opportunity presented itself. Next slide. So our immediate next steps, obviously this year, completing that preliminary engineering. We'll continue our public education and stakeholder engagement, and then formalize a project description for use for NEPA initiation. So that would give us something to take to the public and start the formal NEPA public scoping. Then 2024, we do intend to submit a grant application for this upcoming aging infrastructure grant rotation for a seepage study on 13 miles of the canal. And that will, we do recognize the canal is 100+ years old and there are problems. And so why would we want to just spend tens of millions of dollars up top getting the water there and we can't ignore the canal condition. So there are future projects there as well. We recognize that. We mentioned the tunnels and everything, so that would be something we are considering. We'll formally initiate NEPA next year with the notice of intent, and then pursue additional water procurement. Like we mentioned, the county does still intend to pursue the dam raise water as well as rental pool water to supplement and make it a more feasible long-term project for residents. Also develop the financial and managerial capacity. So looking at really forming the district and what would be needed there. And then I will pass it over to Bud to close this out here.
Madam Chair, board members, again, like I said, I think the important thing is that we appreciate the time to be here and ask to be recognized and supported as you always have since we started, and we have a lot of things that are happening, and it's a big project. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, and it's something that we work on literally every week. And we have a great team of folks here, and I think ideally I would stand for any questions, and also if there's anything that we're missing or that you think we should be doing, please let us know. We'd be glad to hear your thoughts.
I guess I need to unmute. Thank you, Bud. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, this is Dean. I have a question for the county portion of this. What are you considering? What mechanism is that the county, you're talking about a district be formed. What are you considering on that?
Well, I think the county's looked at many different options. Jim Wrigley came in and put together several different options and proposals. And I think, what we're hoping to do is to ultimately go out to the citizens and have some of the, the public hearings and town hall meetings and, and just see what the support of the community would like to go. I think, me personally, I think it's going to, we need to end up with a taxing district or some long-term solid financial support to, that will maintain and operate the system. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Al, go ahead.
I don't know if Bud or if you or Terry want to answer this question, but Terry did mention that there is progress on moving ahead on the Snake River water right application. And so I just wanted to get your take on how those two different projects dovetail with one another. Are they either or? Are you going to do both? And it sounds like the Boise River is a higher priority, but where does this, how do those two projects fit together?
Al, this is Terry. I'll take that. If you'll recall the slide with our estimate of the groundwater deficit on the Mountain Home Plateau was about 40,000 acre feet. And what we see from this South Fork Boise project as currently envisioned, it's probably 10 to 20,000 acre feet, hopefully closer to 20,000 acre feet per year, sort of a sizing. And so that would do about half of that deficit. And so we're looking at both projects long term to support the county with bringing water from the south and from the north in to try and kind of fill that deficit and allow for continued economic development in Elmore County.
Okay. And then, if I may, Madam Chair, a follow up on that.
Yes.
Terry, I think you said, I heard you say something that sounded like you weren't necessarily just going to rely on floodwaters, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant, or maybe I misheard what you said. So can
I think you
elaborate on that?
Yeah, Al, what we're hoping is, and trying to do is get some of the Sanderson Dam raised water. We're also looking at, various rental pool options that may be out there. So we're really hoping that we can support this project both from floodwater and from storage water out of Anderson.
Okay, thanks, Terry.
All right, are there any other questions? Well, thank you, Mountain Home, for your presentation for this morning.
Thank you.
That concludes the presentations for today. I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Madam Chair, you're at other items that committee members may have.
Do any of the committee members have any other items? Jeff, it looks like you turned, no. Okay, Dean?
Nope.
Mark?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Dale?
I'm also good.
All right, how about any of the other board members?
Brian O's good, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Nothing here, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Pat. Al?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. So it looks like we've heard our third batch of presentations from the sustainability list. We have one more meeting scheduled. And I also want to point out that there was a reference in the comments from Neely. He did find that there's a reference to Lost Valley in the state water plan in policy 1L.
Yeah, I found that list. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So until next time.
And Madam Chairman, I would make a motion to adjourn, and along with that motion, give our thanks to the presenters today. Very much appreciated.
Yes, very well done. Yes, thank you to all the presenters. I know it takes a deal of effort to put those presentations together, and we do appreciate you spending time with the board members, the finance committee, and additional board members, and making those presentations. Since we don't need a second for the adjourn, and following suit that I've done the last two meetings, we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.